All right, welcome to this Inner Circle exclusive. This is all about how to improve your hip mobility. I'm just going to show you a couple of movements that are going to help with a big range of the type of movements that you're going to want to be doing to help improve the way that your hips move. So, even if you think, I don't really care all that much about, my hip mobility, or I don't really need that much mobility, in reality, it's very helpful to have good and mobile hips because that, in turn, helps out with a lot of low back issues. So, the low back and the hips just seem to be inextricably linked in terms of, pain as well as performance and that sort of a thing. And so, while this isn't meant to treat or diagnose any sort of pain issues, what you might find is that when your hips move a little better, a lot of things that you have going on with your back or your hips and a variety of other things have a tendency to get a bit better, provided that they're not medical issues. So just keep this in mind, all right? So first things first, we're going to cover something that's going to help you to stretch out your quads. A lot of people, when they're thinking about, I sit a lot, I should stretch my hip flexors. If your quads are tight, and they probably are because they tend to get tighter as we get older anyway, you're just not going to get as much out of a hip flexor stretch unless you've addressed the quads first. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a very good quad stretch that I like quite a bit. Not an easy one, but very worthwhile. So what you're going to do is you are going to, now you may need to adjust the location of your pad. I recommend padding your knees unless you have a pretty soft floor or some sort of padding underneath you. Otherwise it does not feel good. First things first, what you're going to do is you are going to get your knee into position like so. I personally prefer to get my knee all the way back to the wall. Your results may vary slightly, but start here, and you want to have some way that you can brace yourself, at least in the beginning, okay? So right now I'm feeling, even just here, a pretty decent sized stretch in the quad. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to press my foot into the wall, so it's as if, I don't know if you can see the movement here. So I'm going to do this, press. I'm going to tighten up my stomach, tighten up the rest of the body, and then relax. Pick up a little bit of slack. Okay, so when I say pick up some slack, what that means is that when you're pressing really hard and you're really tightening this muscle as much as you can in this extended position, and then you relax, your body is going to, your nervous system is going to give you a little bit of extra wiggle room, we might say. Okay? You're going to continue doing this. Do this for 3 to 5 rounds. Eventually you might find that you'll end up all the way back to the wall. Okay? You might find you can do that with one side and not the other. You'll need to play with it a little bit. This is going to teach you a lot about where you currently are in terms of your flexibility and your mobility. All right? Obviously you want to make sure that you do that with both sides so that you're not walking around in circles for the rest of the day. Okay, so other side, same thing. We're going to get into position. I'm going to press my foot hard into the wall, squeezing my glutes, squeezing my abs, okay? I'm not slouching here, I'm trying to maintain decent posture even if I'm bent forward, okay? Pressing in, squeezing tight, squeeze, and then relax, pick up a little bit of slack, okay? When you're relaxing, you want to make sure that, once again, you're relaxing in the extended position. So that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you go back to where you started from. That's nonsensical to do that sort of thing, okay? So you want to make sure that there is enough, that your body's getting used to this extended position so that your nervous system knows that it's safe for you to be in that position, all right? So we're going to go ahead and do this again, okay? Tightening up the glutes, tightening up the abs. I'm pushing my foot hard into the wall, tightening up this leg, holding on tight, pressing. I'm going to hold. When you do these, you can hold for anywhere from like a 10 to 20 count. You can go longer if you really want. 3, 2, 1, and relax. I'll pick up the extra slack. And as I'm picking up the slack, you notice too with this leg, I'm moving it a little bit forward. I'm changing the position. The idea here is to get a good stretch, not to stay in the exact same position all the time. So keep that in mind, okay? And the last round, pressing hard into the wall, squeezing the glutes, squeezing the abs. Another good thing to do when you're doing this stretch is, if you can, try to point your pelvis toward your face. And that's going to get a much stronger stretch out of the leg. And relax. As you can see, my right side is a bit tighter than the left. So I could get it all the way back, but I'd be pushing a little bit too hard. So I'm going to call it good there and not try to push it any further. All right? And once I've done that, we can start working on the hip flexor stretch. There are a couple of things that you can do to stretch the hip flexors. Okay, so one of them is essentially the same thing that we did here. Pretty standard. You want to get into position here and make sure that you can see me. Okay, so you can get into position here, squeeze this glute, press your arm against your knee, and you're going to repeat that same process of squeeze, push here and resist, squeezing the abs, and then relax and let your hip sink forward. The idea is not to lean back. Okay, once again, the idea is you want to try to point your pelvis upward a bit, and that is going to help to get a stronger stretch in the hip flexors. Sometimes you see people who are doing this stretch where they've got, they're all the way down toward the floor. A lot of that has more to do with low back flexibility than anything else. So you don't want to get into the idea that that is the goal. Okay, because ultimately all that is it's ab flexibility, low back flexibility. Hip flexors may not stretch any more. In fact, they might even stretch a little bit less, depending on how it feels. So it's not any. The goal is not to get your pocket all the way to the floor. Just so you know. Okay. So go ahead and do the other side so that you can see. So first things first, let's find the position. Point the hips upward, like so. Okay. Push forward just a little bit, like so. And you're going to get tight here, here. Press like you're trying to press the knee outward, and you're going to hold. We'll count it down from 10, 9, 8, staying tight, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then as you can see before I relax, I'm going to bring this foot forward, just like so. Maybe you didn't see it depending on the angle of the camera here. So what I did is right before I relaxed, I moved this foot forward and then relax, and then I pick up the extra slack here. Okay? Now that we've got some of this preparation out of the way, next great drill that we're going to do is going to be to open up, particularly for the inner thigh area. So for that, I'm going to aim the camera this way, and we're going to do the infamous frog stretch. Now, one thing about the frog stretch is that you might find that the hip flexors are going to get tight at the end, so you may want to just stretch the hip flexors once more before you finish up. There are a lot of things that you can do with the frog stretch. So, for example, one of them that you'll see quite often is you'll do something like this. I'll get into that in just a little bit. The most important thing that you do, if this is all you do, you'll get quite a bit of mobility from it and quite a bit better flexibility. But there's a caveat here. The caveat is that your back has to stay flat. You don't want to be here. That's just false flexibility. Okay? Back has got to stay flat. Head up, like so. What you want to do is you can get yourself to a position where your knees are pretty far out, far enough that it's slightly uncomfortable for you. You just want to kind of rock in this extended position. Little tiny rocks, like so, okay? Back and forth, like this. And then the optional add-on would be you're going to move to one side, like so, and then you're going to keep your hips back. So you're not coming forward to do this next part. You're going to keep your hips back, and you're simply going to rotate the hip over, like so, okay? So I'll show you from the other side. I'm going to try to get close to this knee, and then I'm going to move the hip over, just like so. Now you might find that that's pretty hard to do, and you can't get it up all that far. Perfectly fine, okay? One thing that you'll notice, by the way, when you're down here, is that this bottom hip here, this flattens out, okay? This is bent, this is straight. So you're going to feel a nice contraction in the side of the glutes here. Your hip on the side that you're twisting over should move toward the ground. So you're going to have to straighten out in order to do that. So one thing you might find is that if you're not doing that, it's going to feel very near impossible, and that's why, because you just can't go any further, all right? So with that out of the way, I'm going to show you also from the front so you get the right idea. It's going to be right here, Okay, bouncing back and forth just a little bit, and you're going to go 1 and 2, just like so. 1 and 2. All right. Now, another thing that you can do is you can start parlaying some of this stuff into some actual exercises. So one that I really like is the Cossack squat. And the way that you're going to do this, and you may find that you need some sort of some sort of help. So like a suspension trainer, like a TRX, or maybe gymnastics rings. Maybe you have to use like a doorway or a pole or something like that. What you'll do is you'll come over to one side like this, and then you can either stand all the way up and switch sides, or you can stay low and switch sides. Okay? If you're starting out, I would recommend you stand all the way up to switch sides, like so. And then as time goes on, you can stand a little bit lower to switch sides, like so. And then eventually you can switch while you're practically still in the hole, or in the bottom position, as they say. All right, now there's a lot more that can be said about hip flexibility training. This is really just scratching the surface. The last thing that I'm going to give you that I think is a very underrated hip stretch, but something that I find to be very, very helpful. I'm going to give you the I'll say the simplest variation. There are more difficult variations, but if you haven't done any of this, all you're going to need is the very simple version. So what you'll do, you'll lay on your back. You're going to get your legs into this figure 4 position. Reach one hand through and grab onto your shin. You notice I'm reaching in the middle of this 4, okay? And the other hand is going to grab on top. And here, what you're going to do is you're going to pull your knee toward your chest, and this ankle is going to start moving toward it. What I like to do is I like to use this elbow to push the knee outward slightly to increase the stretch, just like so. This is going to help to really stretch out everything on the sides of the hip. And it's going to feel quite nice if you do a lot of swings, you do a lot of things that require you to tighten the glutes. And it's especially going to feel nice after doing some of these other exercises that we did, particularly the one where you have to pull your hip over in the frog stretch, just because this is really going to cramp up very strongly. So from the front and back, actually I'll show you from the back, that's going to be more useful for you. You get into position right here, okay? One hand through, grab onto your shin, other hand over here. Use this elbow to push against the knee, and pull to your chest. Okay? So give these a shot. Let me know how you like them. If you've got any questions on how to do them, I'd be more than happy to help out. And in the meantime, have fun and happy training.